Has anyone ever asked you how you're doing? Like, genuinely asked you, and all you can think to utter back is, I'm tired. And have you ever wondered what that actually means? When we say we're tired, does it mean like, I could use a nap or a cup of coffee? Or does it mean like, I could hibernate for 6 months and hide out on a desert island for 5 years, kind of tired? Personally, I feel like sometimes I identify with that last one, but also sometimes all of them at the same time. I just need to pause the world around me and get away for a while. Even just thinking about it sounds so nice. But in reality, taking a nap or going on a vacation or taking a self-care day only gets us so far. And at the end of the day, true rest from the human struggle and from religious striving is found only in Jesus. So, last month I had COVID. And after a rough first few days, I ended up with about a week and a half of a level of tired that I had never known before. I had to quarantine, so I wasn't allowed to go anywhere, but I still had homework, housework, and of course, still taking care of my kiddos. But I was fortunate enough that my husband took some extra days off work to help out. And so in those days, I rested and slept so much more than I'm used to because I literally couldn't do anything else. It was honestly kind of nice. And now that I'm a few weeks back into the swing of things, everyday life has me really missing the rest I got when I literally had no other choice. I feel like balancing parenting, school, work, household management, serving at church, as well as maintaining some kind of social life seems impossible. I feel like I'm drowning in the sea of society's standards and my own expectations. And I feel like my best just no longer is good enough. I think in one way or another, we all can feel this. Maybe for you, it is that balancing act of work and ministry and school and serving and family and friends. And maybe right now, you're also trying to fit in all the extra holiday stuff into this month-ish. Maybe you're doing ministry, like serving, mentoring, and hands-on activities has begun to overshadow your being ministry. Things like spending time with Jesus and meditating on the Word and praying alone and with others. And you didn't even realize it was happening. Do you ever feel like you just don't have time to truly take care of yourself because of just how stretched thin you are? You keep grinding and striving, but you feel like you just can't ever catch a break. You know that true rest from the human struggle and from religious striving is found only in Jesus. But it's one thing to know something, and it's another thing to truly believe it. Matthew 11:28-30 says, "Come to me, all you who are weary and heavy burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light." Before we look at what Jesus is actually saying here, I want to first look at who he's talking to. Jesus' audience in this passage is pretty similar to his audiences throughout most of his ministry: the lost and the Pharisees. This message is pretty much the same for both of these groups, but their backgrounds couldn't be further from each other. Those who are far from Jesus, they burden themselves with the fruitless cares of wealth and honor. They get stuck in the pursuit of worldly pleasures and personal lusts. These men and women who try to earn their own righteousness labor in vain, and all their striving has left them with is more guilt, more shame, and more fear. And what about the Pharisees? Instead of being worn down by sin, they were worn down by religious traditions and ordinances. They were doing all the right things, and following all the rules, but without a true worshiper's heart. And at the end of the day, it got them no closer to God than before. Jesus' message to the Pharisees and to the sinners of his day is the same message he gives to each one of us. Christ invites each and every individual to come to him and to rest their souls. Regardless of your position or status, Christ invites you to put down human sin and religious striving and to take up his yoke or his burden instead. It requires a little bit of sacrifice, a setting down of your own way, but what you get to pick up instead is so much better. You receive rest, peace, and comfort deep in your heart, and you receive a quiet reminder to keep first things first. Christ's burden is simply the heart of his ministry, which is to love God and to love others. Everything flows from these two things. And when we remember that true rest from the human struggle and religious striving is found only in Jesus, we carry his burden. Is so much lighter and easier than carrying our own. Now, thinking back to Jesus' prime audiences, which group do you identify closer with? I know no one likes to think of themselves as a Pharisee, but maybe all your striving to do things for Jesus has actually distanced you from him. Maybe you've been serving and you've been so busy you haven't even realized that your heart has strayed. Or, even though you wouldn't call yourself a sinner or someone who's far from Jesus, maybe you feel like all your struggling and striving to stay afloat in the world has caused you to grow distant from him. You know that only true peace can be found in him, but you can't catch enough of a break to get there. Regardless of whichever group you may find yourself leaning towards, the message and the action steps are still pretty much the same. The first is easy, but also so hard for the one who needs it the most. Take a break from your normal hustle to rest in Jesus. This might mean stepping down from a ministry position or at least taking a long pause, not only to simplify your life, but to make space for personal time with Jesus. This could also mean just rearranging your day and resetting up your priorities around time with Jesus. Set down your burden, your plans, your agenda, and instead take on his burden. Christ's burden is the thing that most characterized his teaching. Like we already said, this is that men should love one another. And when we take on that burden, we find that it is easy and light. So, how well are you loving people? Maybe you need to return to a back to basics kind of faith. Focus first on loving God and loving others, and the rest will come. Usually, this is the part of the sermon where I talk about all the great things we can accomplish if we just embrace and live out this truth. And while I don't want to deny those things, I think if we jump right back into the doing things, then we lose the main point of what Jesus is saying here. Yes, God designed specific things for each of us to do, but we will only be able to get there. We will only be able to change the world if we are truly rested in Jesus. And if we keep the main thing in our lives. Resting in Jesus is keeping a laser focus on his mission is the only way we make it to those big life things he has set up for us to do. But it begins with rest and choosing the lighter load. So, how heavy do you feel? Are you tired from the struggles of everyday life? Or even burdened in the trenches of ministry? Do you feel like you need rest, but you simply can't find the time? A friend of mine always says, you can be as close to God as you want to be. So, looking at your own life, How close do you truly want to be to God? True rest from the human struggle and religious striving is found only in Jesus. So let's close by taking a moment to just rest in His presence. Now, let's try to remember that peace and carry it with us into the week. Thanks. I'm praying you have a great week. Bye.